let's start with the next topic, that is JPA collection mapping. So as we know, in Java, collection is an interface that is nothing but a group of multiple objects in a single unit, right? Where multiple, we can say multiple objects are wrapped up in a single unit, right? So it is an interface. So in JPA, this collections are particularly used to save the wrapper classes object. Like we can say, suppose if we are creating any object with that of the primitive data types like integer or string, so this wrapper classes object, and we can particularly store in databases using JPA collection mapping. But JPA only supports three type of collection, that is list, set, and map. So let's understand what is JPA list mapping. So before understanding this list mapping, there is one term that comes commonly in all the mapping, is embedded. So what do you mean by embedded? Now, for example, let's suppose like we are given a form, or a student is given a form in order to fill all his details, right? So as we know, what basically the form will include, like ID, then the name, it may be age, date of birth, and address, right? So in this address also, like we have different fields, like the state, the pin code is there, or otherwise the city is there, etc. So what does it say? That address is a particularly a single unit, but this different fields are the fields that are particularly part of this single unit. So this type of classes or this type of values are nothing but the embedded 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 classes in JPA. Okay, so they are basically denoted in JPA with that of the embeddable notation, right? So again, we can say that like here the addresses are nothing but the embedded. Okay, so for this, for example, for entity, we were representing it with as added entity notation. So whenever there is an any embedded class, we will represent it as a embeddable notation. Okay, so whenever we are saying that a class is embedded, it means what? That class is a part of other class. For example, suppose we have a person entity in which we have ID, name, age, and suppose address. Okay, so here address is nothing but an embedded class. It means that it will be treated as if it belongs to this person class directly, right? So inside this there is no need for, like inside address there is no need for creating different fields like a state or pin code, etc., as they will be directly embedded from the address class. Okay, so for the embedded class, that is address, we will use the notation as embeddable. And in the class which we are integrating it, like in the main class, we are, as if we're talking about the person and address example, person is the main class where we will include the address. So in the main class, for that field, we denote it like as element collection, okay, for addresses. So basically what we are, if we revise it simply, we can say that address is an embeddable class, and the class in which we are including the address address value or the address class, that is a main class, that is a person class. It is denoted, or the field address will be denoted as added element collection. Okay, so basically the syntax for this embeddable and element collection will be same in list or set or map. Okay, so what the difference is, like whenever we are saying there is a list mapping, right? So the address will be of will belong to list interface. Okay, so list is nothing but a interface that is basically used to retrieve any data based on the indexes, right? And whenever we say there is a set mapping, means what we are saying, this embeddable that is an embeddable field, that is the address. Okay, it is of the type set. It is the hash set, okay, which is basically responsible for storing the unique elements, but at the same time they are unordered elements. That means that the order will not be maintained. And when we are saying there is a mapping, so it means what? The value will be stored in the form of key value pair. So whenever you give any address, like whenever we mention any address field, right? So we have to give it as one. That is, one is the key and the value related to that field, like address. Like suppose an A1 object A1, we are storing the values like pin code, some random pin code, state, and Delhi. So 1 comma A1. It's like there are these three types of mapping. So this was just a basically a theory concept. Now let's see in coding how it works. Okay, so let's go and start with the coding. So this is again the employee entity which we have first created for doing the CRUD operations. So the basic syntax about creating the entity class, that is a persistent XML file, or I can say about creating different entity manager factory and all, remains the same. Just the changes is that initially we just added this two field, that is ID and name. Now what we are going to do is add a new field, that is address. But first we will see the list mapping. So we will create it of the type as list, that is private list add sorry I'm so sorry, that is addresses. Okay, addresses equal to new array list. Okay, And for denoting it in the main class, the notation is this element collection, right? So when let's input all the libraries first, right? So element collection library is inserted, array list is inserted, and like for address, now we will need to create a class. So let's click on create address class. So this I'll create in the main package only, not in entity. Okay, finish. Now here, like we is the address class. So here we are basically give it as with the annotation as embeddable to mark it as embeddable class, right? Then we have is private int pin code, right? Then private, sorry, string. Then for example city, and private string, suppose state. Okay, and for the same, let's create the getter setters and everything. Yeah. So this is the execution of the address class. Now in employee entity, we will create a field constructor and the getters and setters for address. So getters and setters, select all, generate, right? And then what we have is using fields and generate. Okay, so in this way we have completed the employee entity and address job. Okay, now in database we need to create a separate table for addresses, okay, such as where like here the employee entity table will remain as it is with id and name. We are creating a separate table that is employee entity address where we will have pin code, city, state, and then here we are generating an foreign key which is named as employee entity id, which is basically referring to the primary key of the employee entity, which is nothing but id. Okay, so this is how the table is created. Now, next is we are going to insert the values for them. So in we'll come to persist.employee. So this was what we was doing earlier. Let's remove it and start with initializing the values, right? So first what we will do is first we will give for addresses a1 equal to ad new addresses add addresses, right? So here what we will have is import address right first. So a1 dot set first pin code is suppose 0073, right? Then a1 dot set city as suppose we are doing is Gurgaon, and then a1 dot set if we are doing state as suppose Delhi. Okay. Next we are creating another object for address as a2. Okay. Then we are setting the values for the same. Okay. Here we are just changing the pin code to suppose 5. Then we are setting the city as suppose Jaipala and suppose MP, like Madhya Pradesh. There's just some random values. Okay. Now we are creating object for employee entity like employee entity object for E1. So as new employee entity, right? So first we are going to set the ID as 1, then even dot set name as suppose again James, and even dot. Now what we are doing here is first we are adding, that is we are doing particularly adding the address of object a1 to the list of addresses that we have created here, right? So particularly by doing the get address we are retrieving the list, and in that list then we are adding the a1 object address. Okay, similarly we will also create one more employee fill as e2, suppose e2 e2 and e2. Okay, here I am checking id as 2, suppose name as joy, and again add a2. Okay, now next step is em dot persist e1 and em dot dot persist e2, right? Now let's see, let's save this and run the application. Now what is happening, let's see. So our application has started. Now let's go and check the database. So this is our employee entity. So as you can see, in employee entity, the values are getting saved as James and Joy with ID 1 and 2. And in address field, you can see like particular address is saved. Like for employee entity with ID 1, the address is this, and for ID 2, address is this. So this is how list mapping is done. Let's talk about the set mapping. So set is also same, just we have to change the list with that of the set interface like set address. So like in employee entity, as we have list, right? So here we will change this to set, and then this will change to new hash hash. Okay, if I again import it, control S. Okay, the working is a set entity. So what we are going to do is just change the name of our collection list, replace list name with that of set, and then we are going to generate the getter and setter method for this. Okay, and again we have to also, so getters and setters for addresses generate, because it's of type set, as you can see here. Okay, and next we will make is a field constructor, right? So here we will do is a field constructor, that is source, then constructor with fields and generate. Okay, let's save this. And then persist.employee, what I have done is like just I have edited the like with ID 1 and 2 we have already inserted, right? So we are just changing the IDs and the particular employee names. The remaining details will be as it is. Now let's run this and see what happens. It says that the collection has set up. Let's go and check. Here in employee entity, the particular ID employees have data has been inserted. Then address, as we can see, even with the hat set, the values have been inserted with the set mapping. As you can see, that is 3 and 4 similarly. Okay. Now next is what we are talking about was the map. Okay, map mapping. To just change the set interface for the addresses as the map. In map, as we know, we have to pass the key value pair, right? So the key is of type integer, and the value is of type address. So that's why it is integer comma address, right? So here, like I have created the same, like I have embedded as element collection same. I have used hash map, imported the libraries, then created the particular constructor, get method, set method for the same. Now how we are going to save the value. So before that, in database, there is one thing to note, that as in map collection mapping, as we are saving two values to that of the database, right? Two new values. That is, in map we have a key and a value. So for that, we all in the address table, along with the foreign key, that is employee entity ID, we also need to create one field for map key value. Okay, that is the key, because this will be the key and the value will be the address detail like pin code, city, state, etc. Okay, then in the persist employee, just have added more employee objects here to save more employees. And when we do, like when we are saving a particular address to a employee, suppose E2. So the method is nothing but E2 dot, we have to do is get addresses, as in order to put any value in map. Okay, map collection. We use put method, right? So in put, we have to pass integer key, that is value key, and the address. Like as if here we are passing the address with object A2. Okay, so basically this is the format for saving the address. Okay, so this is what the particular code look like. Just add some values. Now let's run this. Now see what happens. So the connection has been set up, as you can see. Let's go in database and check. So in employee entity, let's check. So for 6, 7, 8 particular values have been added, and huh, and when we go for employee entity, then values with like for 5, the map we can say for entity like ID with 5, the map key value is 1. This is a particular address. Like see, so there is no we can say value is getting stored in the form of key value pair. Like this is a key, this is a value, and this is a foreign key. Okay, so this was all about collection mapping in JPA. In next video, we will study about more mappings, that is one-to-one, many-to-many, and one-to-many. So till then, this was all about JPA mapping. Thank you.